today. Yeah, we were raining today, so it's still, at least it's still,
Right.
which is not a good sign. Yeah, it gets kind of frightening when everything is just still.
Still. Right.
Yeah, call it the calm before the storm.
Right.
It's not good. Not good at all. Okay, I see people are coming in.
Right.
They're coming in slowly. Slowly but surely. We're going to start with a recap of contract law to make sure that everybody grasps the concept. That's where I want to start from. So if you haven't read your notes from last class, you could read it while we wait a couple minutes. We have what, 2 or 5 persons on?
Right.
So
I finally got my book.
okay, good. I'm glad you got your book.
Yes.
And now you could write in your book as we go
Right.
through. That's good.
Okay. Oh, you can't make noise now and class. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Oh,
That's all right. I know that's how it is. No, that is how it is. Okay, so 6:33, 2 more minutes, and then we'll start. I know some people would be of the view, well, I'm here on time, so let's go. Look up something else. 1 more minute. All right, let's start then. Okay, who wants to begin the recap of contract law? Volunteers. Contract law, what is it?
I'll read.
Go ahead.
We reading from the book, right? Verbatim, right?
No, we don't do that. In your own words.
Well, for me, contract law basically is whenever two persons come to an agreement over a sale of an item or sale of services where both persons agree to the same end goal or to the
Okay.
same terms.
All right. Okay, I'll take that. Davisha, so based upon what Sid just said, you would say that a valid contract has how many elements?
I think about 4.
5. Yeah, 5. 5 elements of a valid contract. And what are those 5 elements?
Um, I think it's the the agreement or like the negotiation or something like that. It's the offer. Then I can't remember what else, Masacha. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Okay, all right. So you use a couple words there just now that are not a part of the elements of a contract. Remember, if you listen to Sid, it must be an offer and it must be acceptance. Offer and acceptance come together to make an agreement. But in addition to that, you must have consideration. Remember what I said, consideration is either the money or carrying out the act. Then the fourth one I said is that the parties must have the intention to create legal relations. So you're looking at the minds of the parties. What did they intend at the time that they came together to enter into that agreement? And the fifth element is they must have legal capacity to enter into that contract. So in addition to those 5 elements, but those 5 elements are critical for you to have a valid contract. So in addition to that, depends on the type of contract, it should be in writing. Of course, any contract must be for a legal purpose. You cannot enter into a contract for something that is illegal. And you don't enter into contracts that are against public policy. Most contracts, if it's not a very simple contract, must have terms and conditions within it, setting out the duties and responsibilities of both parties, looking at the obligations, looking at any legal liabilities, and it should always state at the very beginning the nature of why the contract has been entered into. Of course, you know that when there is a contract, then of course you have to talk about how the contract is to be terminated. If the contract is breached or it's terminated, of course, there are remedies that you can seek. And always remember that a contract has privity, which means only the parties to the contract are the ones that can bring an action. So now let's talk about an offer. What is an offer? Anybody?
An offer is, I guess, one person being the person who wants to request, I guess, request the service or the goods. Placing, giving, I guess, what they would intend to pay or give.
Correct. Because if they're the person who was offering, then they're the offeror. So it's just like you say you're going to sell a car. So you're the offeror. And that offer could be made to a single person or to a group of persons or even to the public at large. But there are times when you have to distinguish between an offer and an invitation to treat. So what's an invitation to treat? What's the difference between the two?
I think an invitation to treat is when you don't have intentions on going into a contract with someone, but you like you trying to make what you selling look enticing.
Okay, that's good. That's a good way to put it. So let me give you a case. In the case of Big, B-I-G-G, voice versus, that's a V, Boyd, B-O-Y-D, Gibbons, Gibbins, Limited. During the course of negotiations for the sale of his property to D, P stated that, quote, for a quick sale, he would accept 26,000 pounds, end quote. For a quick sale, he would accept 26,000 pounds. D replied by letter that he accepted this offer. P wrote back, expressing his pleasure at D's decision and stating that he was putting the matter in the hands of his solicitor to proceed with the sale. The Court of Appeal held that the impression given by these communications was that the parties intended to and did achieve the formation of a contract. So you see, the court really looks at not just the communication, but the intentions of the parties that they want to be bound. Always remember the 5 elements: offer, acceptance, equal agreement. Then you look at intention to be bound or intentions to create legal relations, consideration, which is the money or the action, and then whether or not the parties have the legal capacity to enter into the contract. So of course, there is acceptance. And what is acceptance? What is acceptance? Can you
Acceptance is
go ahead?
acceptance is when both parties come to an agreement over the stipulations that they put in place on the contract.
Okay, all right. But remember now, acceptance must be what?
It must be
Clear.
I guess clear, right?
It has to be clear.
Unequivocal.
Yes, it has to be very clear. And of course, the offer must still be open. Because you can't accept an offer that is closed. And of course, an offer has to be communicated directly to the offeror or to its agent. And now we know what consideration is, which is money or in kind, means an act. Intention to create legal relations is, of course, that the parties intended to enter into that arrangement. But it excludes social and domestic arrangements. And then last week, we also spoke about capacity, being of sound mind, or having the authority, or being the actual owner of the item that you wish to sell. And of course, persons can act as an agent on behalf of a principal. And then we also spoke about minors and persons who are mentally incapacitated and persons who are drunk. Now, once you enter into a valid contract, a contract can be discharged, and that can happen in 4 ways. The offerer and the offeree can decide that they want to discharge it. And that discharge of the contract can be done by consideration. So that means that once the act is done, the contract is finished. It can be also be done by performance, which means that once both parties have undertaken their obligation and their duties, then the contract is completed. It can also be discharged by breach. And breach is when there's a term or condition in the contract, and that gives the innocent or the aggrieved person the right to sue. Or if they don't want to sue, they can treat the contract as having been discharged. And the fourth way you could discharge a contract is by frustration. And this means that the contract itself cannot be completed. And it can't be completed because it's due to some action that is outside the control of the parties. For example, a hurricane. Or it could be someone died or the person got sick. They can't complete the obligation. Now, of course, whenever there is a breach of contract, there are always remedies. And those remedies for the breach can be under common law or it can be under equity. So under common law, an aggrieved person could seek damages. They can bring an action for an agreed sum of money, or they can ask the court for what they think the contract is worth. Equitable remedies are always at the discretion of the court. And they're normally only given where damages are not adequate enough as a remedy for the breach. And those equitable remedies can be specific performance. And specific performance means that the court will order that whatever the contract was about, that it actually, the other party perform their part of the bargain. An injunction means that no further action can happen. They have to stop. Rescission means that the contract comes to an end, it's terminated. And what you do is you bring the parties back to the original position they would have been in before the contract was entered into. And of course, there's rectification. And all that means is that you're correcting a mistake. So now let's look at your questions that you had to work on. Let's start with Nadia. Question 1. Jermaine is 17. He bought a pair of cufflinks costing $500 from Elvis, but he hasn't paid for them.
Good night.
Good night.
So I'm just answering, I'm giving my view on just A.
Yes, Jesse.
Okay, Jermaine is 17. He has bought a pair of cufflinks that he has not paid for as yet.
Mhm.
So Jermaine is a minor because anybody under the age of 18 is considered a minor.
Mhm.
And my view is that the cufflink is not a necessity, is not shelter, food, water, clothing. So I said that he is not bound to the contract, so he can return the cufflinks and not have to pay for them.
Mhm. But if Elvis wanted to insist now that he pay, what is Elvis' argument?
I don't think Elvis has an argument because minors are only bound to the contract if It's a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think Elvis would have an argument for the cufflinks.
I
But how
agree
do
with
we know? How do we know the cufflinks aren't a necessity to Jermaine?
How would cufflinks be considered a necessity? I would consider that luxury, if anything. A
Hey,
what?
he might feel like it's a necessity. Yeah, I mean, just throwing it
I
out
mean,
there.
so what would the definition of necessity is? If he could say what the definition of a necessity is, then he'd know that cufflinks would not fall under that category.
No, necessity is anything that you feel like that you need.
He doesn't need them. What purpose does a cufflink serve that you need them?
Okay, Nadia. Both sides, whenever you're answering questions, both
Mhm.
sides have to be answered. So,
Okay.
all right. So, but you're right.
Okay.
Start off by saying, like you said, that Jason is a minor.
Mhm.
Being a minor, it raises the issues of contractual capacity. And he is
Okay.
in 3 contracts. Yours is the first one, the purchase of cufflinks and from Elvis. So
Mhm.
the first thing you write is, just like you said, a minor is bound by a contract for necessary goods.
Okay.
The case for that is Peters versus Fleming.
Okay.
And in that case of Peters versus Fleming, it said that necessaries are such goods as are fit to maintain the particular person in the state, station, and degree in which he is.
Okay.
So that's the arguable point,
Okay.
because it defines what is a necessary good. Such
Okay.
goods as are fit to maintain the particular person in the state, station, and degree in which he is. So on one hand, Elvis can argue that the cufflinks are necessary.
Okay.
If he wants to argue that, let's say that this fella is a prince or duke, and
Okay.
that the choice of cufflinks, he can argue that it is a necessary. But on the
Okay.
other hand, because the question didn't give you any details,
Mhm.
your argument would be more plausible
Okay.
that as a regular person, he doesn't need cufflinks costing that amount of money. That cannot be a necessary.
Okay.
And the case for that would be Nash, Nash, versus Inman, Inman.
Okay.
Which Elvis will have the proof not only that the cufflinks were capable of being necessaries, but that they were actually necessaries in the case of Jermaine,
Okay.
if he wants to be paid.
Okay. Got it.
Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Everybody else got it? Yes? No?
Yes, yes.
Right, good. Let me pick someone for B. Do I have a
Wait,
volunteer?
Miss Archer, I have a question.
Go ahead, say.
So, with you saying he has to prove that it's a necessity to be paid. So in this case, he could just return them, is what you're saying. If he
Yes,
doesn't,
yes.
okay, okay,
Uh-huh.
all right.
He could just return them. He doesn't have to pay a dime. Okay, who's gonna do B? Where he bought an exercise bike from Kenneth. And now he's decided it's a waste of time and he wants to have his money back. Who wants to do that one? Shanique?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So my stance on B would be, what I'm thinking is based on, I guess, Kenneth's return policy. Like if he could do a refund, if he like accept cash refunds, um, still saying that Jermaine is a minor, so I wouldn't consider, um, um, he bought an exercise bike from Canada and paid for it, but now decided that the exercise waste of time and want to his money back. Like I say, me thinking about it, I'm thinking it's more based on his refund policy. So if he wants to return the bike and have his money back, then I guess that would be okay. But then at the same time, Jermaine is a minor and he isn't necessarily obligated to enter a contract, being that he is a minor.
Mm-hmm.
That's really my take on it. I don't know if there's anything else.
Okay. Anybody else? You sound sick like me.
Yeah, I really under the weather.
Yeah. All right. For drying. Let's
Thank
see.
you.
Okay, Sid, I know you want to jump in. Let me get you.
So in this case, I feel like there is consideration since you already paid for it. And then for it to be canceled or for him to get his money back, it would have to go through the process of a discharge. In this case, by agreement, since both persons would have to agree that he wants to void the contract. And in some cases, you can consider the bike a necessity because that's for his personal physical for his physical gain, so he could use it for exercise to say physically he's trying to get in shape or whatever. So I think they'd both have to agree to void the contract.
Okay, so let's look at it. He bought this bicycle, right? He bought it. There are two questions. We know he's a minor, but he bought this bicycle. The question now is always, because he's a minor, is the bicycle a necessary or not?
I'd say it's a necessity.
Okay,
I'd say it's not a necessity.
right.
I'd
So
say,
go ahead.
I'd say it's a necessity if he's an athlete.
True, but he may be fat and want to lose weight.
It could also be a necessity because that's a health concern, and the doctor advised that he exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it could be considered a necessity still.
Okay.
Could it not be a necessity for him to
But
get to and from, his job or, wherever? Because he's still a minor, so he
It's an
can't legally drive.
exercise bike. It's an
But
exercise
at
bike.
the same time,
So it don't
at the
move.
end of the statement, he still said that he considers exercise a waste of time, so he doesn't want to do it. So that's obviously not a necessity because he's saying that exercise is a waste of time to him. So
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a want on his side.
Mm-hmm. So let's just say it's not necessary. So if it's not a necessary, is the contract enforceable against him?
No.
No.
I don't
Does he?
think.
But he's already paid for it.
So you would have to just take that loss.
Yes. He can't recover the money. He can't recover the money. He's saying that he was a minor.
All right.
Now, let's just say if we were to argue that the bicycle was a necessary, then what?
Then he could argue that in court and then probably try to get his money back.
Yes. And he could argue that maybe the price could have been more reasonable based on his age. But always remember that once the minor has performed the contract, he can't recover the money. He's already paid the money for the contract. and for the bicycle. So that's it. All right, go on to the next one. C, where he agreed to work as an assistant in Cycles Unlimited shop, but left after 1 week because the hours were too long. And the contract provided it could only be terminated by 6 months' notice on either side. Vincent, you want to try?
Is it possible for me to get a next question? I just trying to catch up on where y'all at right now.
Okay, all right. Yeah, you'll
All
get
right.
one later. Yeah, not a
Okay.
problem.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Ellen, you want to try?
Yes, I would say from the inception, the contract was a legal one,
Hmm.
because the job is a necessity.
Hmm.
The man would have breached the contract because clearly stated that the contract could only be terminated by 6 months notice on either side.
All right. But there's something in that, that should jump out at you. Yes, we know that it was a contract of service. We know that it is necessary.
Mhm.
But for someone who's doing work,
So Cycles Unlimited is not liable.
no, but look at the requirement. It's 6 months notice. Isn't that a very long time for someone who's just doing
Yes,
that kind of work? And that's what the court will look. They would say that 6 months is kind of harsh.
right.
And if they come to the conclusion that it was harsh, that means it was also oppressive. And so the contract would not be binding on Jermaine.
Okay.
But even if, let's just say, even if the court say the contract is binding on him, right?
Mm.
You have to consider what remedy is available. That's the question you have to think about. He can't get an order from the court to say that Jermaine must return to work.
Right.
So the only thing he could do would be to sue for damages for breach of contract.
Right.
And the most likelihood, because it's for a minor, he'll only get a little small sum of money. So you're getting the idea now how these questions work? Kind of?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's go on to question number 2. I think I'll start with Capron, and she could be assisted by Taylor.
Okay, my first response, I'll respond with what I sent in the homework.
Mhm.
Due to the breach of contract, Jane is in right. She's in the right to consider it canceled. However, Keane is due some compensation for the time invested in this contract, which is 3 weeks. If Keane wants to convince her to let him continue, he can offer to cover living accommodations for the 3 days Jane and her family was inconvenienced. Jean is aware that she can get the job done at a lower cost, so she will probably want to cancel for any simple reason in any event. So I would advise, what's his name, Kane, to cancel and just be compensated for the time invested.
Boy, you're a speedy one. Speedy one. All right, hold on. Let me hear what Taylor has to say.
In my response, I advise Kane that I am against what Ms. Capron says in terms of Jane having to compensate him for the work done, simply because the contract stated that it is a condition that the house be habitable and proper care and skill would be used in doing the work. And the house being flooded, that's a big I guess breach in the contract, because it's not like a little water leak, it's the entire house being flooded. So
Yeah.
I would say Jane rescinding the contract is correct. And if Kane was to want to complete the job as he wants to, then that would be solely his, I guess, free labor in better terms, for lack of better terms, sorry.
What you mean free labor?
Right, because it says that he wishes to complete the job. So if Jane, does not want him to complete the job and he still goes ahead and does it, then he would be doing that free.
Oh, I see.
Right.
I got.
So she wouldn't be obligated to pay him then, basically.
Okay. All right.
Right.
So
Yes,
when we did question one related to minors and the rule in law is that a minor can enter into a contract for necessities. So now when you reach to question 2, whenever you're dealing with legal issues, the thing that comes to your mind is what topic or what is the issue in the question. So question 1 was about minors and necessaries. So now when you come to question 2 is about the contract and the contents of the contract, in particular, looking at the condition. Whenever you look at a contract, the contract has the elements, and then it has the other considerations to make a contract valid. So in this one, we are looking at the terms of this arrangement between the two parties and whether or not the action that was carried out by the laborer fracturing the water pipe, was that a breach of contract? So in looking at what happened in there, which one of the elements do you think we should be discussing? Is it offer? Is it acceptance? Intention to create legal relations? Consideration? What is it? Legal capacity? Public policy? What is the issue we should be discussing based upon this
I would
question?
say consideration.
You say what?
Consideration.
Maybe at the end.
Okay.
Because when you read it, it tells you that the contract had a condition in it. So you're going to talk about condition, that condition, which is part of the terms of the contract. But remember now, when you enter into a contract, one of the key things because we're not talking about offer and acceptance in here. So if you're looking at a condition in the contract, which falls under the terms of the contract, then you have to be looking at what was the intention of the parties when they entered into this contract. So the question is really looking for you to discuss the intention of the parties. And in discussing the intention of the parties, you're going to look at this condition that was a part of the contract. And the condition says that this contract, that all work will be performed with proper skill and care, and that the house will remain habitable throughout the period of the works. So now the question is whether or not the laborer, by carelessly fracturing a water pipe, would that amount to a breach of contract based on the condition?
You was asking that a question?
Mhm.
It does.
Oh, yes, that
I'd
would,
say
that would
yes,
be a
it
breach of the
does, yes.
contract.
Yeah.
I say yes, because the house was inhabitable.
Right.
And it
So-
also wasn't done with care because the person carelessly broke the water pipe.
Agreed. So at the end, just like both of you said, at the end, it was a breach of contract. And of course, Jean is entitled to terminate the contract, because that was the condition in the contract. Not only just that they would perform the work with proper skill and care, but also that they would be able to remain in the house and it would be habitable. And because they have to move out, along with not the carelessness of his laborer, he has breached the contract. Now, in that, for that question, let me see if I could find a case. That would be, in the case of Bunge, B-U-N-G-E Corporation versus Tradex, the judge says that when you're determining a particular term in the contract, which is to be treated as a condition, that is normally done at the time of contracting. And the judge also said that the court shouldn't be in a hurry to treat all contractual clauses as conditions. That you really must look at the intention of the parties. Any questions there?
So, Ms. Archer, I have a question. So what if the person had broken the pipe, but they still could have lived in the house? That wouldn't have been a breach of contract, correct?
Would not have been a breach. No. Because it wouldn't have been material enough to actually looking at the condition. When you look at the condition say proper skill and care, but also that they can still live in the house. So if you're looking at reasonableness of that condition, is more towards them being able to stay in their house, because if they leave their house, then that means that they're going to have to spend more money. But if the work that you perform is not to the standard from which I require you to perform, then of course, you're going to have to do it again at your own expense. Or you're going to have to pay me if I have to get someone else to come in to do the job that you should have done based upon you saying that you have the proper skill to carry out the work. So everybody getting an idea of how legal questions supposed to be answered? Because you need to wrap your mind around this in terms of answering banking law questions. No more comments?
No, ma'am.
No?
for me.
Alright, so let's go to 3. Charlton, you want to start?
This was the in-class discussion or this was the homework too?
In-class discussion. The first thing to remember when you're doing any legal question is you have to look at every sentence. You analyze every sentence. You don't just read it and you start off by answering by giving a conclusion, by saying, yes, this is what happened. No. Legal questions are not answered in that way. The first thing you have to do is you have to read the question. When you read the question, you have to establish the facts. And the facts means that you read the question, you try to summarize it as short as you can. The next paragraph, you have to write, what are the issues? What are the issues means you're going to answer. Ask yourself legal questions that need to be answered. The third one is you're going to tell or state what are the laws, the legal cases that relate to the issue you're going to discuss. And fourth, then you're going to come to an analysis based on an application of the law to the issue. Does everybody get that? You write the facts in your own words. You write out the issues, the questions, the legal questions you want to answer. You then write out or state what is the law or the legislation that's applicable to that issue. And then you're going to apply that case law or that legislation to the issue to come to a conclusion. Everybody get that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now,
Ms.
Dave-
Archer,
go ahead.
sorry, can you repeat that for me, please?
Okay. If you're looking at question 3, the first thing you do is you read the question. Then you have to summarize the facts of this question in your own words. So that doesn't mean you repeat the same thing again. You summarize it. The second thing you write is what are the legal questions you want to answer. The third thing is you then write what case law you're going to apply and or legislation. Then your next paragraph is you're going to do an analysis. which means you're going to take the case law and legislation and you're going to answer your issues. Your last paragraph will be your conclusion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. So question 1 and question 2, we just went through it to see how you would answer a question just based on the rules that we learned. Now in question 3, we're going to actually begin to write out the answer the way it should be done in the correct format. So you have to train your mind to think legally. You're not being trained to be a lawyer. You're just being trained to think legally and logically. Because we're going to take the same format that we're about to do, and we are going to apply it to banking law. So how I gave you the case for contract law, those 2 or 3 cases, as from next week, you will have banking law cases that you need to know. So let's take the first sentence. Dale advertised his car for sale in Monday's paper for $15,000. For quick sale, best offer secures. What is that?
I think that would be the offer.
All right.
Okay.
So Eric comes to see the car on Tuesday and said that he would give Dale $14,500 for it. He told Dale to let him know by Friday. What is that?
Consideration.
Hmm?
Would that be the consideration?
No, it's not consideration means that
That
money
would be a condition.
Accept, unaccept.
And
Unaccept.
then,
That would be a condition, right?
Okay.
and then to create legal relation.
Okay, he's paper for 15. Eric comes and says he'll give him 14,500. What is that?
Negotiation.
That's an offer.
Thank you. It is an offer
Offer.
because the price has changed. So if we stop right there, we would say that Dale is involved in negotiations with Eric. You agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So on Wednesday, Frank examined the car. After returning home, he posted a letter to Dale in which he said, I agree to buy the car for $15,000 asked by you. But before Dale received this letter, Frank telephoned and told him that he didn't want the car after all. What is that?
Oh.
What's happening there?
They trying to negotiate the contract? Oh,
No, he say, he agreed to buy it and they turned around and said he don't want the car after all. So what is that? Isn't he revoking his offer?
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So on Thursday, Dale posted a letter to Eric agreeing to sell the car for $15,000, but Eric did not receive the letter until Saturday. What's that there?
I think that's when like the offer expired.
Okay. And then Eric then went to Dale's house and produced $7,500 in cash saying, that's the best I can do. but Dale refused. So in essence, your facts should actually summarize by saying that Dale was involved in negotiations with both Eric and Frank. And this question involved offer, acceptance, acceptance under postal rule, because remember he posted a letter, and the revocation of a posted acceptance. You see where I pulled those from, right? And summarizing. Because those are the main actions that took place. It was offer, it was acceptance, then there was acceptance by postal rule, and then there was a revocation of a posted acceptance. Always remember, when you talk about offer and an acceptance, you must speak about invitation to treat. Because you have to distinguish between an offer and an invitation to treat. So the next part after you do the facts is you're going to look at the issue. And the question you're asking yourself is what? Whether there was a contract between Dale and Eric, and whether there was a contract between Dale and Frank. Now, to come to that answer as to whether or not there was a contract, you look at the question and you see what elements of a contract is the question talking about. And based upon the facts that you summarize, you know that for the question, you're really looking at offer and acceptance and the postal rule. So for your law side of it, you're going to have to put cases that relate to those topics. So for an invitation to treat, the case is Partridge, P-A-R-T-R-I-D-G-E versus Crichton, C-R-I-T-T-E-N-D-E-N.
Exactly, to repeat that for
P-A-R-T-R-I-D-G-E versus Crichton, C-R-I-T-T-E-N-D-E-N. So if you look at when he first says at the very beginning in his newspaper ad, $15,000 for quick sale, what does that sound like to you? Is that an offer or an invitation to treat?
invitation to treat.
Treat. And he adds the words best offer secures, it becomes an offer. And that's what that case established. Partridge versus Crittenden. So that's one case you have down. Now, when it comes to the postal rule, the case for that is Adams versus Linsell, L-I-N-D-S-E-L-L.
L-I-N-D.
S-E-L. So the postal rule, where it applies, communication of the acceptance is deemed to take place when the letter of acceptance is posted. And when you talk about the postal rule, there are two aspects you must consider. One is whether communication through the post was envisioned by the parties. One was whether communication through the post was envisioned by the parties. And the case for that is Henthorn versus Fraser. And the second part is whether the terms of the offer preclude the operation of the rule. Whether the terms of the offer preclude the operations of the rule. And that's all the cases I'll give you. So now let's look at the scenario now so we could come to a decision as to whether or not Dale has entered into contract with either Eric or with Frank. So let's start with Eric. Who wants to tell me about Eric? What happens when Eric offers $14,500 for the car? Because now Eric is making an offer. You have to ask yourself whether or not that offer has been accepted. So let's go from,
Except Eric made an offer for 14,500, and the conditions was that he would let, Dale would let him know by Friday. The offer was not accepted
mhm,
because because Dale did not receive the letter until Saturday.
uh-huh. But did they agree to answer by mail? You remember what I just told you with the postal rule in Adams versus Linsell? It has two prongs. Is whether or not it was envisioned that that was the communication, or
No,
where. Go
it
ahead. So,
it wasn't clear. It was not clear how they would communicate, not according to this.
mhm. Because Eric offer was made how?
In person.
Verbal.
Yes, so it was an oral one.
Mm.
So you could argue that if the offer was oral, then that means that it could have been envisioned that the reply should have been done orally and not by post.
Okay.
And if we take that premise, then you would say that the postal rule does not apply.
Yes. Mm.
But if we go further, what else did he say? Eric asks, told Dale to let him know by Friday. What does that mean?
That mean that the offer was open until Friday.
Right, so he's saying, so what he did is he gave him actual notice. And so by giving him actual notice, he's precluding the postal rule. So this means that communication of the acceptance only happened when Eric actually received Dale's letter. So what happened when Eric he stipulated that acceptance must be notified by Friday, but the letter was received on Saturday. What does that mean?
That means the offer expired on Friday.
It had lapsed. The offer had lapsed. So that means what? That means that David, that there was no relationship between between Dale and Eric. Because it lapsed. So now let's look at the next one. Dale and Frank. The letter from Frank on Wednesday is what? The letter from Frank on Wednesday is what? What is that?
An acceptance?
You sure it's an acceptance?
I think it was a retraction because he said he didn't want the car anymore.
On Wednesday, at the very beginning, when Frank say the letter from Frank on Wednesday is a what?
An agreement.
I think that's the intention to create legal relationships.
Uh-huh. So it appears to be an offer, correct? It's an offer. But what happens when Frank calls? What is he calling to do?
Revoke the offer.
Okay. And so what does that mean? If he's calling to revoke the offer, what is that? Equates to what? That means that there was no contract between those two.
Okay.
But you see, what Frank did was, Frank didn't just say, I agree to buy the car for 15,000. He says, I agree to buy the car for 15,000, asked by you. So that what does that mean? That means that when he posted the letter and he said, I agree to buy the car for 15,000 asked by you, then that letter is acceptance. Now, in order to agree that it was acceptance, you have to look to see the way in which Dale regarded that letter. So Frank would have sent his acceptance by letter. Was that the communication that was agreed between Dale and Frank? If that's the communication, then when it was mailed, the postal rule applies. And if the postal rule applies, then that means that there was a contract between David and Frank. But what did Frank do? Didn't he withdraw his acceptance? And by withdrawing his acceptance, there was no contract. So Dale doesn't have a contract with either Eric or with Frank. And that would be your conclusion. That there was no contract between Dale, Eric, or Frank. More confused? No? Yes?
No,
Good.
just
So-
getting terms under the legal terms.
Yes, yeah, the legal terms. So when you look at the law of contract and its relevance to banking, there are several. So I want you to draw a table. 2 columns. 6 lines each. One side says the law of contract and the other one says relevance to banking.
Important, 6 lines each.
Yeah, 6 lines down. So if like you were at the end of a page now, I don't want you to be to the end where you have to turn over or put it on the page by itself. The law of contract on one side and the relevance to banking on the right-hand side. So at the top, I want you to write, to be valid, a contract must be formed. To be valid, a contract must be formed as an agreement. To be valid, a contract must be formed as an agreement, implying offer and acceptance. That's in bracket. Which was intended to create legal relations. Which was intended to create legal relations. And for which consideration has been given. Full stop. These are the basic tenets of contract law, TENETS. These are the basic tenets of contract law. These are the basic tenets of contract law which underlie all commercial contracts. Not least the contracts entered into by the banker or by the bank as supplier, not least the contracts entered into by the bank as supplier, consumer, and employer. Want me to read it again?
Yes,
So let
please.
Okay. To be valid, a contract must be formed as an agreement, in brackets, implying offer and acceptance, close brackets, which was intended to create legal relations and for which consideration has been given, full stop. These are the basic tenets of contract law, which underlie all commercial contracts, not least the contracts entered into by the bank as supplier, consumer, and employer.
Thank you.
All right. So now let's look at the law of contract on one side versus the relevance to banking. So when I give you the law of contract, I'm going to give you the relevance to banking at the same time. So first thing under the law of contract, a contract is an agreement which legally binds the parties to it. The contract is an agreement which legally binds the parties to it. On the banking side, a bank has a contract. A bank has a contract in bracket or more than one in close bracket. A bank has a contract or more than one with each and every one of its customers. Everybody has that?
You could repeat that for me.
Okay, under the law of contract, left-hand side, a contract is an agreement which legally binds the parties to it. Under banking, a bank has a contract or more than one with each and every one of its customers. 2, under contract, the parties agree to be bound. The parties agree to be bound when there has been an offer. The parties agree to be bound when there has been an offer which has been accepted. The parties agree to be bound when there has been an offer which has been accepted. On the banking side, right, banks must be careful. Banks must be careful to ensure that advertisements, banks must be careful to ensure that advertisements and information leaflets, banks must be careful to ensure that advertisements and information leaflets do not constitute open offers which can be accepted by anyone. Three, a contract is a bargain. A contract is a bargain. Each party must give. Each party must give and receive something as consideration. A contract is a bargain. Each party must give and receive something as consideration. On the banking side, banks provide services. Banks provide services. Customers pay interest. Customers pay interest, charges, or fees. Customers pay interest, charges, or fees. Or simply allow their funds, to be used by the bank, or simply allow their funds to be used by the bank for lending. I repeated, banks provide services, customers pay interest, charges, or fees, or simply allow their funds to be used by the bank for lending. 4, the parties to a contract must intend to be legally bound by its terms. The parties to a contract must intend to be legally bound by its terms. The parties to a contract must intend to be legally bound by its terms. On the banking side, the bank's contracts with its customers, and any amendments thereto, are commercial ones, which are assumed to be legally binding. Five, the contract's terms may be expressed by the parties, or they may be implied by law, On the banking side, most banks do not explicitly state the terms of their contracts. Except in standard form contracts. Increasingly, they are under pressure to change this practice. Most banks do not explicitly state the terms of their contracts except in standard form contracts. Increasingly, they are under pressure to change this practice. And 6, most contracts need not be in any particular form. Most contracts need not be in any particular form. And on the banking side, security agreements, including guarantees, and consumer credit agreements, including guarantees and consumer credit agreements, are required to be in particular forms if they are to be valid. Anyone miss anything? Yes? No?
All right.
Okay. Give me 1 sec. Let me get a glass of water while you're still writing. Okay, so no questions. No questions? No?
You know,
No questions. Okay. So next class, we're going to talk about the banker customer relationship. And that banker customer relationship is based on common law. And so there are going to be some cases that you need to read before class next week. And I'm going to get some volunteers who are going to tell us about those cases that they read. And where is my notebook? So go to chapter 4. I need someone who's going to tell us about United Dominion versus Kirkwood. Who's volunteering? It's online. Should I just pick someone? Yes. Okay. Lorenzo.
No,
Yes, I've assigned you the case of United Dominion Trust versus Kirkwood.
right, that's Vincent, not Lorenzo.
What says Lorenzo on here?
Oh, okay, okay.
It should be
Okay.
Vincent.
Yes, it's Vincent.
Oh,
okay, if Vincent wants to do it, that's fine.
okay, that's another Vincent. That's Vincent Marquito.
No, my name
Yeah.
is Lorenzo.
Right, and I'm Vincent Mackey.
Right.
What? Oh, okay, I got you now. So
Okay.
Vincent or Lorenzo? Which one taking?
I would take United Dominion and Kirkwood.
Okay, all right then. So that's Vincent. I need someone to take Headley Byrne versus Heller.
I'll take that. Nadia.
Okay, Nadia. I need someone to take Foley versus Hill.
I'll take Foley versus Hill.
Okay, Ellen. I need someone to take Joachimson versus Swiss.
I can take that one.
I'll take that one.
Okay, that's it. Okay, I need someone to take Curtis versus London City.
I'll take that one.
Who's saying that?
Lorenzo.
Oh, Lorenzo now. Oh, now I have Lorenzo. Okay. I need someone to take Turnier versus National Provincial. Volunteers, none. Shanique.
Okay.
Okay. Else I give you. London Stock Bank versus Macmillan.
I'll take that one.
Who's that?
Avisha.
Davisha? Okay. I need someone to take Greenwood versus Martins. Capron?
Okay.
Okay. I need someone to do Devines versus Noble. Robert?
He says okay.
That sounds okay. Let me see if I could find another one. I think you may be able to find, let me see. Let's try Hollis versus Fowler. Hollins versus Fowler. Who doesn't have one? Nadia? No, Nadia has. Who am I missing? No, everybody is assigned one, looks like. Let me give Sid, take that one too. Hollins versus Fowler.
Okay.
Okay. And Ellen, you could take Morris versus Martin and Son.
Okay.
Okay. So what you're gonna learn now going forward from chapter 4 to the very end, that whenever you're dealing with an issue with a customer in banking, you're gonna either refer to the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act, or you're going to refer to case law. So in this chapter 4, I've given you cases that are part of common law from the UK. We do have local cases. So you would have seen when you first got your book, I sent you 2 cases. One was on McCushla versus Scotia, and then Scotia versus McCushla. So
Right.
as on, yeah, we're going to discuss those cases. So don't wait until the day before when I say we're going to be doing those cases to then to try to hurry and read it, because you have to try to apply what you have been learning to those cases to see why the judges came up with the decisions that they made. Because they're all based on principles, and we'll be able to discuss what were those principles in banking that the court used to come to the decision. When we also look at those cases, the local ones, we're going to follow what we learned in the last class, which is we're going to look at how the judge came to his decision, whether or not he used any of those rules of statutory interpretation. So you're going to have to start to apply what we have learned. So for those of you who have started to review the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act, you need to start to read it, because everything you do in banking comes from that legislation. In addition to that, all of the contracts that you would give to the clients to fill out comes from common law or from the legislation itself, but most of it is from common law. And you'll begin to understand why certain rules are in place.
What is the assignment exactly?
What is the
Assignments with the cases?
cases that you have been assigned? When we come to those in the notes, we will stop so that you can give us a summary of the case. So you're really going to tell us exactly how we just did that last question. What were the facts? What was the issue? And what did the court decide? So you don't need to go long, but you're going to have to know these cases in this chapter and in other chapters in order to answer questions for the exam. So if I give you a question in the midterm to do with just a simple contract, someone wanted to buy a car, or someone wanted to buy a painting, or someone promised to do some work for somebody, I'm not really looking for you to give me any cases, but I'm looking to see your thought and how you set it out. Where you give me the facts, then the issue, any case law, if you could remember any from company law, and then your analysis. But when you answer a banking law question, I want your facts, I want your issues, the question you're going to ask yourself. Then you're going to tell me the case law in banking, and or you're going to give me the legislation, which means you're going to give me the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act, the section, if you could remember it, but you should be able to tell me what the section is in your own words. It's not as difficult as it sounds. It comes with practice. But you'll begin to understand how to answer questions when issues arise in banking law. So we good in terms of homework?
Okay.
That's good.
Yes, ma'am, I guess.
Yes,
Yes.
everything is good.
Okay. And then what I will do at the end of the next class, I will give you all a very easy homework question for you all to write out and send back to me, just so I can see if you've understood how to set out your answers, so you don't lose points when you answer the exam questions.
Okay.
Okay? But we'll get the feel of it when we do chapter 4, and you begin to see the cases and how they work, and then I'll give you a homework question that you can actually make an attempt and send it to me so I can see your style of writing, if you actually understand everything that I've said so far. All right, so those who are eager beavers can now go and look for their cases. If you can't find it, send me an email, and then I will probably just give you a summary or just what's relevant for the case that's assigned to you.
Ms. Archer, is there a due date for us to send the homework or just before the next class?
No. The homework question will come to you after next class. Not tonight. I'm not giving you homework tonight.
Okay.
You get the homework after next class, because the homework will be a banking law question. Remember, the ones what you did for tonight were just contract law. I'm going to send you a question next week that's based on banking law that I want you to attempt.
Okay, but these cases you want us to just go over.
Yes,
Okay,
just a
Okay.
summary.
okay,
Now, if you all are team spirited, when we finish on Tuesday, someone could compile all of them and then share it among all of you. So you'll have all of the cases there in a summary. Understood?
great.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Right. So instead of each one you sitting down and summarizing 12 cases, someone could just decide to send them all to one person, and then they set it out and then distribute it to everybody else. And you work as a team. And you find it's not that difficult. All right. So now the real work begins.
Okay.
All right. So have a good evening. Start reading your cases. Like I say, if you can't find it, send me a note and I'll send you a summary or just what you need in terms of that case and the relevance to what we're doing.
Okay, copy that. A question, Ms. Archer. I was trying to I send you at least 3 emails Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. stating that, like, I wanted the questions all over and was stating that I just got my book, so I was just starting to follow up on the classes and
Mm-hmm.
where we actually were, but I never got a response back.
What name you, what email you send that to?
I sent it to the email in the, would send the link
Uh-huh.
for the Zoom call and all of that.
I don't see it.
Yeah, but I sent it on Sunday afternoon, Friday, and Saturday.
Mm-mm. I don't have that.
Okay,
Looking
well,
in it and I don't see it. No.
it would have been sent from a DAA role email.
No.
No?
Uh-uh.
Well, I mean, that's probably a malfunction on my part then.
You send
I
it to
would,
AchaChristine1985 @gmail.
I am not looking at it right now, but I sent it to the email where the link came from last week to me for
Uh-huh.
the Zoom call. So I
Oh,
just resent it back to the what was sent from the link.
let me see if he had used the other one. No, it's not in my other one either.
Okay.
Let me see if it didn't go to junk. I could double check. Hold on. Spam. I don't have anything in spam.
Well, I don't know what the problem is with that, but
Send it again. Send it again.
I will forward it back again after we get off just to see if you get it. To make
Uh-huh.
sure that I have the right email, just in case if I have any questions or whatever.
Let me see. Let me see. Because I use the email from last week.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just look, let me see. Oh, come on. Open up. Yeah, if you send it to AchaChristine1985 @gmail.com, it'll come to me.
Okay. Like I said, I'll just send it. I'll resend it again and I'll check it to see if I made a mistake with the email.
Yeah, there's 2 emails you have here. Send it
Uh-huh.
to the one that says Archer first. The one that says Archer Christine, send it there.
Okay, I will do.
Okay, all right.
All right, ma'am.
Okay,
Oh, I see it. I see it.
you see it?
Yes, I looking at the kids.
Yeah. So we're about to have some fun because banking laws is lots of fun. Yes, when you read the cases, they're good. But everybody have those 2 cases I mentioned, right?
Yes, I got it.
You got those 2, okay. And I'll see if I can find a couple more to go with that. Local cases, because there aren't a lot of them. But I'll see what else I can find because the local ones really help you to understand how the courts and the judges come to their decisions.
What are the 2 local cases?
Mucushla versus Scotiabank and Scotiabank versus Mucushla.
In the book, right?
No,
Yeah.
they would have been sent.
We
in
got
an
those. An
Yeah, you
email?
should let me know. Because if you
No.
didn't, I'll send them back to the office again.
Okay, because I didn't get it. I thought that was in our book.
No, they're too big.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll see what happened. Because I do have more cases, more local cases. I want to send you all the case of Maurice Clinton and Scotiabank, another Scotiabank case. So I want to look at that. And then I have another one I want to send from the Privy Council. So be prepared. It's time to work now. Okay.
Miss Archer, who would have sent the cases to us?
Oh, well, either would have been Mr. Pratt or Miss Dean.
Because I got some items from Mr. Pratt, but those were only like the apps and stuff.
Right.
Oh, you didn't get the cases.
No, I didn't get any cases from him.
Okay, all right,
That's what I'm saying too. I never got anything as well.
all right. I'm gonna make sure you get it. I'll make sure. I'll make sure you get those. Because they should have been
Okay.
sent them to the office. And then I can send these other ones, Maurice Clinton versus Scotiabank. Okay, all right, you'll get it. Look out for it,
All right, thank you.
okay?
All right, thank
All right.
you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so y'all started on these, and then you'll see the other ones coming in. Okay?
Well.
All right. We
All
should
right.
have some good discussions next week. Okay, so have a good evening. We're good to go.
Good
Same
night.
All right,
everything.
good evening.
Good evening.
All right. Good night,
Okay,
everyone.
good night. Good
Good
night.
night.